Hello my friends and welcome to another episode of Lore and Stuff. The month of October is upon us, the month of Halloween. And although Halloween isn't a tradition in Africa, that doesn't mean I can't provide you with a spooky story. So today, the story I got for you is about the origins of death. Death Giant by the Krachi people. When mankind was still young, a famine swept across the land. During this time, a young man was traveling through the forest, looking for animals to eat, but he could find none. But he did spot a large mound in the forest. As he got closer and closer, he eventually realized it was not some simple earthen mound. It was in fact a giant. And this giant had long hair that could stretch from one village to the other. The man tried to sneak away to safety, but the giant spotted him. He said, "What do you want?" The man said that he was hungry and looking for something to eat. The giant said, "I shall feed you if you become my servant." And so the young man agreed to this. While he lived with the giant, he ate more than he'd ever eaten in his life. There was more than he could ever eat there. He came to learn the giant's name. His name was Death. After a time, he became homesick, and he asked the giant if he could go back home to see his family. The giant said to him that he may do so, but he must bring back a servant for him to go. This was agreed upon, and so he went home and brought his brother to Death. And then he went and enjoyed his family time. But he soon came to learn that the famine was still being felt across the world, and he became hungry again. So he visited Death, and Death agreed to let him stay and eat again. He wondered where his brother was. Death told him that his brother was off on some business. So he paid it no mind and continued to eat his fill. The time again came that he was homesick again. He wanted to see his family once more. And so Death allowed him to go, but this time he wanted a wife. So the young man brought his sister, and then he went off on his merry way to see his own home. But again, even though he did get his wish to see his family and go home, he became hungry again. He missed the delicious food that the giant could provide. So he came back to the giant. And the giant was getting annoyed, but he allowed him to come back and enjoy his meat. The young man walked into a room that was covered with meat all over the place. But something was off. Something was different. He looked at the bones, he looked at the flesh of the meat. You realize this is the flesh of my sister. He told the villagers, when he was able to, about what had happened. The villagers, horrified of this, approached the giant's hair that stretched out so far, and from a safe distance they lit it ablaze. The fire crept closer and closer to the giant's head as he thrashed about, and then finally succumbed to the fire and died. The young man went and inspected the giant. He saw a magical medicine tucked away in the giant's hair. He took some of this medicine and sprinkled it on top of the bones of his loved ones, and miraculously they came back to life, both his brother and sister. But for some strange reason, he wanted to also sprinkle some on the giant. The villagers protested. Why would you want to do that? He might come back to life. But he sprinkled just a little bit on the giant's eye, and his eye suddenly opened. From then on, death came upon the land, and every time the giant blinked, somebody died. Bonus artifacts. It's worth noting that some versions of this story, the boy dropped the medicine onto the giant's eye accidentally. I suppose that makes more sense, but I went with the version I learned years ago. Plus, it makes you wonder why on earth would he want to help the giant. Maybe he felt he needed to repay him for feeding him and keeping him alive during the famine. Maybe he just felt sympathy for the giant. Who knows? The imagery in today's story is Togolese in general, and not specifically Krachi. It's hard to find Krachi images online. Some African peoples are more obscure than others. I've searched many times to find a depiction of the death giant from this myth, but have never found anything. Frankly, the Krachi might not have ever sculpted the giant from this story. Sometimes certain mythological characters just aren't depicted visually. Also, one has to consider how dangerous such a sculpture would be. Keep in mind that most African art served a ritual purpose and did not just exist for art's sake. That said, I do know of African sculptures that are said to have the power to magically kill people. I plan to talk about a mask with that power in a future episode. So with that in mind, perhaps the Krachi do have a sculpture of the death giant. Either I simply have not seen it yet due to it being very obscure and hard to find, or any sculpture or such depiction of it may have been lost to time and simply isn't in any book or on any website. Hard to say, but at least we still have the story. Anyway, I wanted to be able to show you some sort of Togolese artwork regardless of all that, which brings me to my next point. The image I used was of Titicheri shrine figures made by the Moba people of Togo and Ghana, which is a protective figure that promotes health and prosperity. There are three types: Yendu, which are small personal figure shrines; Bawang, which are larger Titicheri sculpted to represent recent ancestors of the family; and finally we have the Titicheri Sakwa, the largest figures, which are named after clan founding members. If the artist isn't careful when making these sculptures, he risks blindness or insanity. What? Where am I? You heard nothing just now. Alright, moving on. You may have also noticed the Togolese architecture in there. Here's a closer look. It's really cool looking. These buildings are known as the Tankianta Tower Houses, and they are inhabited by the Batamariba people. Alrighty, if you can like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with your friends, it'd be much appreciated. Have a happy Halloween, my friends.